Democrats and the media are giving Joe Biden a free pass on China, NAFTA, and trade in the first debate. Hello, this is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government, DailyTorch.com. Today we're going to be talking about the first Democratic debate and Joe Biden and where he is on trade. As you will recall, trade was one of the big issues that helped President Trump win the state of Pennsylvania, also Michigan, Ohio and particularly in these Rust Belt states that put Trump over the top in 2016. And that was the real reason that Trump won. And here's a piece from Washington Post right after the election: how Trump won, the revenge of working class whites. This is from Jim Tankersley. And he writes, for the past 40 years, America's economy has raked blue-collar white men over the coals. It whittled their paychecks. It devalued the type of work they did best. It shuttered factories and mines and shops in their communities. New industries sprouted in cities where they didn't live, powered by workers with college degrees that they didn't hold. And so we get down here into the meat here. It talks about the rejection of business-friendly policies favored at various points by elites in both parties, which deepened trade relationships with foreign countries and favored allowing more immigrants in. And it was a raw outburst at these trends of rising inequality and economic dislocation that defined America's economy thus far this century. So in all of the 2000s, and Trump was the major beneficiary of that. The people feeling abandoned by the rapidly globalizing economy. That's when, but the early 2000s, that's when China came into the World Trade Organization. And Biden had a lot to do with that. Biden, he voted for NAFTA in 1993. It was 61 to 38, and Joe Biden, he was voting yes. And then he in 2000 he voted for permanent normal trade relations with China. That one was passed even more overwhelmingly, 83 to 15, and Biden was on that side of history. President Trump came in. He says this has been bad for the U.S. economy. And it has been because Congress did that, because and WTO was the other factor of that. U.S. economy has been growing more slowly. It hasn't grown above 4% since 2000, not above 3% since 2005. And we got to 2.9% in 2018, and that's with Trump's trade policy starting to go into effect. But we're not as powerful as we once used to be. The U.S. Global manufacturing market share, according to the World Bank, has gone from 13% to 7.5%. China, on the other hand, has risen from 5% to over 16% in 2017. And so they've been the net beneficiaries here. And so the question is, are Democrats, are they learning the lessons of 2016? Did they think it was all about Russia, or did they eventually start to pay attention to this nagging trade issue that defeated Hillary Clinton? And I'm not confident that Democrats have really wised up to this. And the way you know that is they're giving Joe Biden a pass. He voted for NAFTA. He voted for permanent trade with China. But you wouldn't know about it if you had been watching the debates. No questions on trade or China were directed at Biden. NAFTA was not even mentioned in either night of the debate. And so what lessons are they really learning? Are they trying to talk to those union households in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio that abandoned the Democrats and voted for Trump? Doesn't sound like it. The most you got was from Senator Michael Bennet out of Colorado, who said, quote, in China, the president has been right to push back on China, but it has been done in completely the wrong way. We should mobilize the entire world, who all have a shared interest in pushing back on China's mercantilist trade policies. And I think we can do that. You know, there's another word for that. It's called leading from behind, where you're waiting for the rest of the world to act before you can take decisive action. And in the meantime, Trump is taking decisive action. He's put 25% tariffs on up to $250 billion of Chinese goods. He's saying that the rest of those of the goods they ship here as well, a couple hundred more billion, those could be taxed as well. And to challenge China's trade position vis-a-vis the United States. And I think that's the way to go. I think you're bringing China to the table by doing that. The trade negotiations are resuming, and we're, finally at a point where maybe we can actually get a breakthrough on trade with China. But no thanks to Michael Bennett, he'd still be waiting for the rest of the world to act when we're the ones who are most directly impacted. We should be the ones to act in U.S. interests when the time comes for that. So this is not really an inspiring message by Bennett there, leading from behind. And the rest of them, the candidates, they're not very tough either. Andrew Yang says quote, the tariffs and the trade war are just punishing businesses and producers and workers on both sides. What is this, the Wall Street Journal? Pete Buttigieg declared, quote, China's fundamental economic model isn't going to change because of some tariffs. So again, are these Democrats running for the counties they lost in 2016? That's what they need to do. If they want to take the White House back from the Republicans, they got to compete on trade, and they got to do it in Pennsylvania. They got to do it in Michigan. They got to do it in Ohio, and I'm not seeing that right now. Now, to be fair, in the first night of debate, when Biden wasn't on the stage, several of the candidates did identify China as a top threat. This was the second tier of candidates. I think that when you're talking about Biden, he's got a very kind of pro-China on trade attitude, and that's going to be reflected. He does well in the polls until people figure out, I think, where he has stood on these issues, and they're going to realize how unsuited he is to take on Trump in those Rust Belt states that carried him over the top in 2016. Trump's going to hammer Biden on these issues. And so, but where are the Democrats? Are they gonna go after Biden on these issues? So far, not so. Time will tell. It's still early in the process, but I think that Biden's getting a pass here, and it's not going to help Democrats if they just pretend like nothing's wrong. They can win Pennsylvania back. They'll just pretend like nothing's changed, and we'll just run it like we did in 2016. Okay, we'll see how that works out. It didn't work out for Clinton. And everyone was shocked and depressed after the election. But there was some understanding, even in the Washington Post after Trump won. It had nothing to do with Russia. It had to do with these union and conservative households in the Rust Belt that made up the Electoral College majority. When you did exit polls with these folks, they said that half of these voters said the economy was the most important issue. A majority said international trade takes away American jobs. This is from the Washington Post. 3/4 said the economy is not good or poor, and nearly 8 in 10 said their personal financial situation was the same or worse than it was 4 years ago. This was in 2016. 2/3 said they preferred Trump to handle the economy instead of Hillary Clinton, compared with less than half of the electorate overall. These frustrations are not new. They have mounted for decades, boiling over in the slow recovery from the Great Recession. This was particularly true among men from 1975 to 2014, according to census data analyzed by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. White male workers without a college degree saw their median incomes fall by more than 20%, adjusting for inflation. Their incomes fell by 14% from 2007 to 2014. So this is the case of the forgotten men and women in the U.S. economy. That's why Trump won. And Democrats today, I'm not certain that they've really caught on to what really happened here. So I'll leave you with the closing here. In past campaigns, running against a free trade Republican, Democrats would have, in the past, consistently adopted a pro-American position on trade. But given an administration, the Trump administration, that is actually acting on this issue, while they were all talk, now all they can do is manage to adopt the opposite position. Whatever Trump's for, they're against it. Apparently, that includes trying to win in the Rust Belt as well. That's the commentary. This is Robert Romano, Vice President of Public Policy with Americans for Limited Government. DailyTorch.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications, and have a great day.